After 25 years, my husband chased someone younger, but my words left him so speechless. On the night that would eventually unravel her entire life, Naomi Sterling woke to the sound of her husband's voice drifting in from the hallway. The digital clock glowed 3:07 a.m. in red numbers beside the bed. Darren's tone was low and strangely energized, threaded with a nervous excitement she hadn't heard in years. She stayed very still, breathing shallowly, letting the words leak in through the crack beneath the bedroom door. "We have to do it properly," Darren was saying. "She won't see it coming." His mother's voice answered, faint but recognizable. "Of course she won't, darling. Just follow the plan. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads." Naomi's fingers curled in the bedsheet. There was only one she that mother and son discussed so conspiratorially. Naomi shut her eyes as Darren's footsteps approached. When he eased the door open, she arranged her face into the slack calm of sleep. The mattress dipped as he lay down, carefully, like a man afraid to wake a beast. His body was tense beside her, muscles coiled, heart beating faster than any sleeping man's should. Morning found him oddly tender, hovering at the stove, humming, bringing her coffee to the table like a newlywed. "Naomi, my love," he said, kissing her cheek. He smelled of some sharp, expensive cologne she'd never seen on his shelf. "I was thinking we should pick a restaurant for our anniversary today. I want this year to be perfect." Perfect. In 25 years of marriage, the perfect celebrations had always existed only because she planned them. He simply arrived at the table and critiqued the food. Naomi studied him over the rim of her cup, his cheerful chatter, his inability to hold her gaze for more than a second. Something in her chest tightened like a fist. When he rushed off, he left his phone on the nightstand. It lit up with a calendar reminder, call S, 11 a.m. The letter sat there on the screen like a stone. Later, watering the plants by the window, she asked the question as casually as she could. "By the way, who's S in your reminders?" Darren spun around so fast he nearly dropped his tie. For a heartbeat, panic flashed in his eyes, then smoothed over. "Oh, that Sanchez. Colleague from Seattle. We're dealing with a work issue." His left eyelid twitched, just once. Naomi had lived long enough with that twitch to know it for what it was. A flag planted on the hill of his lies. "I see," she answered, smiling pleasantly as if nothing inside her had shifted. When the door closed behind him, she stood by the window, looking out at the dull October sky hanging over Georgetown. 25 years. They had met as students, she the serious accounting major with a head for numbers, he the charismatic management student who could talk anyone into anything. They had built a marriage on shared dreams, children, a house full of noise, holidays spent with a chaotic, laughing family. The years had given them professional success and countless trips but never a child. Doctors had found no medical explanation. Nature had simply remained silent. Darren had taken it hard. His mother, Celeste, had taken it worse. A sharp knock on the door brought Naomi out of the past. She opened it to find Celeste, as flawlessly assembled as ever, wrapped in perfume and judgment. The older woman glided inside without waiting to be asked, eyes sweeping the condo in the habitual assessment that always left Naomi feeling as if her home had been weighed and found wanting. "Naomi dear," Celeste said, lips curved into an icy smile. "How are the plans for the big celebration? I hope you're not doing everything at home. An occasion like a silver anniversary deserves a proper venue." "Darren wants to celebrate at a restaurant," Naomi replied, offering her tea. "Ballroom, catering, the works." Celeste brightened. "As it should be. Important moments must be seen." She sipped her tea, gaze drifting over the bookshelves as though mentally comparing them to her own mansion. "By the way, I was thinking about the future. Darren isn't getting any younger. No grandchildren, of course." Her tone became syrupy. "Don't you think it would be wise to arrange a will for the younger generation? My nephews, for example. Good boys. Ambitious. It would be a shame if the state got everything. Naomi set her cup down carefully. We don't have children, Celeste. I'm not sure why your nephews would suddenly inherit our property. Oh, just practical thinking, dear. One never knows what may happen. Celeste's gaze sharpened, sliding toward the bookshelf where the hidden safe sat behind framed photos. Speaking of property, where do you keep the papers for this condo? There it was. The mask slipped for a second, and Naomi saw the hunger beneath the polite veneer. In the safe, she said evenly. Why? Oh, no reason. I just like people to be organized, Celeste replied, waving a hand. It would be terrible if documents got lost. After she left, the condo felt colder. Naomi sat on the couch, replaying the late-night whispers, the mysterious the mother-in-law's sudden concern for legal documents. Piece by piece, a picture was forming. She didn't yet see the whole image, but she recognized the outline of betrayal. Her pulse quickened. Darren had never been secretive about his computer before. He'd always used the same simple password, the date they met. Now it rejected her. She tried his birthday. No. Celeste's. No. A thought struck her, bitter and sour. She typed their wedding date backward. The screen unlocked. The browser history made her stomach clench. How to divorce when property is shared. Spousal rights in asset division. Retaining the marital home in a separation. Article after article, all read in the last 2 weeks. Further down, how to protect the house in divorce. Can a spouse be persuaded to sign away property? Her hands trembled as she scrolled. If she had eaten anything that morning, she might have been sick. Her phone rang, making her jump. It was her friend Candace, her voice a blunt contrast to the polite venom of Celeste. Naomi, I'm not sure how to say this, but I saw Darren today. He was at the jeweler's at Tyson's Galleria, with a young woman. They were looking at rings. She had her arms around him like they were teenagers. Naomi swallowed. What did she look like? Maybe 30. Blonde. Designer coat. The kind of woman who spends more time in salons than kitchens. Candace hesitated. Are you okay? I will be, Naomi lied. Thank you for telling me. By the time Darren came home that evening with roses and a box of chocolates, Naomi's heart felt like glass. He pressed the flowers into her hands and announced, with theatrical sincerity, "For my one and only." She held his gaze. "We need to have a serious conversation about our future." He flinched almost imperceptibly, then reached for the remote, flipping on the TV. "Let's not spoil things, babe. The anniversary is around the corner. We'll talk after the party." "All right. After the party." The phrase slid over her skin like an icy finger. Whatever trap he and his mother were weaving, its center would be that celebration. Naomi smiled faintly, as if reassured. After the party, then. Inside, something colder than fear took root. It was not revenge. Not yet. It was the instinct to survive. The next morning, Darren dashed out early. "Meeting," he called over his shoulder, not bothering to meet her eyes. The door slammed. The condo exhaled. At 11, the landline rang. Naomi let the answering machine take it. Celeste's voice flowed into the room, clear and confident. "Dee, it's Mom. I spoke to Mr. Hayes. Everything can be arranged. Just make sure she suspects nothing until the last moment. Call me." Hayes. The supposed Sanchez from Seattle. The lies clicked neatly into place. Naomi walked slowly to Darren's forgotten phone. It demanded a 6-digit code. She tried their usual dates. No luck. Then an absurd thought struck her. He might have said it using a date significant to the other woman. She typed in March 8th, International Women's Day in numeric form. The phone unlocked. The message thread with Sierra was a knife that carefully sliced through any remaining illusions. "My love, just a little longer," Darren had written. After the anniversary, it'll be sorted. The condo will be ours. Sierra's replies were impatient, laced with entitlement. You promised we'd be living together by New Year's. I'm tired of hiding. Your mom said it can be done. I want that view, D. Lower down, another thread. Celeste. Are you sure Naomi's name is on the title? He'd asked. I hoped it might only be mine. His mother had answered. Both names. But Hayes says there are ways. She'll sign if you handle it properly. After we're done at the party, she'll have no fight left. They weren't just planning to leave her. They were staging her collapse. Naomi took screenshots of everything and forwarded them to her own phone. Then she set the device back exactly where she'd found it and sat down, hands pressed to her knees, forcing herself to breathe in and out until the ceiling stopped spinning. She needed help. And she knew exactly who to call. Aisha, it's Naomi, she said when the familiar voice answered. Can we meet? It's about family law. Aisha, now an established attorney in that field, didn't waste time pretending it wasn't serious. Come by at 6, she said. And Naomi? Whatever it is, we'll figure it out. That afternoon, in a glass-walled office high above the city, Naomi laid out the story. She spoke at first in the third person, as if the woman in trouble were someone else. Aisha listened without judgment, eyes sharp, pen flying occasionally across a notepad. Let me guess, Aisha said eventually. This isn't about a hypothetical friend, is it? Naomi's composure broke for a moment, and she shook her head. It's me. Okay, Aisha replied quietly. Then we stop talking like victims and start talking strategy. They went over the facts. The condo. The cabin. Naomi's job as a controller at Alliance Development. Their childlessness. The suspicious lawyer. The heavily scented younger woman. First rule, Aisha said. Do not tell him you know. Let him think his plan is intact. Meanwhile, you gather everything. Screenshots, voicemails, call logs. Especially proof that he's planning to pressure you into signing away your rights. Naomi nodded. And the condo? Who paid for it originally? Aisha asked. Walk me through that purchase. Naomi thought back to 2005. Her parents wiring money. A real estate lawyer. The title signing. I think my parents paid the full amount, she said slowly. But I'm not sure how it appears on paper. We added Darren's name a little later. At the time, I thought I was being romantic. Aisha scribbled another note. Find that lawyer. If your parents gifted the property specifically to you, and then it was added later, there is a strong chance that the condo is your separate property. That changes everything. As Naomi left the office, Aisha squeezed her hand. Remember, they're counting on breaking you emotionally, so you'll sign whatever they put in front of you. Don't give them that. You are not the helpless character in their story. On her way home, Naomi stopped at an ATM and checked their joint savings. In the past month, nearly $30,000 had bled out in discrete installments. She could guess where it had gone: gifts for the mistress, consultations with Hayes, deposits for the party that would be used as a stage for her humiliation. Later that evening, Darren came home smelling of another woman's perfume, his smile too wide. You look tired, he remarked, adjusting his cufflinks. You know, you should take more care of yourself. You're turning 50, it's not the end of the world, but maybe start going to the gym? See a dermatologist. Candace's daughter is 30 and looks 25. Women your age can't afford to just let everything slide. Every word was rehearsed, a preemptive justification for his betrayal. Naomi looked at him calmly. You're very concerned about appearances all of a sudden. We all have to adapt, don't we? He said, rummaging for keys. Anyway, I have a meeting tomorrow. Saturday, but it'll take all day. A meeting, she echoed softly. Of course. When he was in the shower, she sat down at the laptop and opened another browser tab, this one for herself. A week earlier, she had received a registered letter from Germany and had not yet fully absorbed its significance. Her Aunt Josephine, her father's elder sister, had passed away, leaving everything to Naomi: a condo in Munich, a high-end investment property in Miami Beach, and a substantial amount in cash. The notary's summary put the total value at more than $3 million. Naomi had planned to surprise Darren with the news on their anniversary, perhaps over dessert. She had imagined his delighted grin. The universe, it seemed, had a dark sense of humor. Now the inheritance was no longer a romantic secret. It was a lifeline. She opened online forums, reading about transferring foreign funds into personal accounts, protections for inherited property, and the ways in which spouses could, and could not, claim a share of assets acquired from relatives. Then she created a brand new bank account in her name alone and began the process of preparing for transfers. On Monday, she visited a different attorney, Mr. Perry, the real estate lawyer who had handled the purchase of their Georgetown condo 2 decades earlier. Time had silvered his hair, but he recognized her at once. "Mrs. Sterling," he said warmly, "how have you and Mr. Price been enjoying that apartment?" "Mr. Perry, I need your discretion," she said, taking a seat. "I need to know precisely how that condo was acquired." He pulled the file from an archive, adjusted his glasses, and frowned thoughtfully over the documents. "Interesting," he murmured. "The purchase funds came directly from your parents. And here," he tapped a line with his finger, "the deed of gift names you as sole recipient. Mr. Price's name was added 2 months later as your husband. Legally speaking, it began as your separate property." Naomi's lungs filled with air that felt like sunlight. "So in a divorce." "In a divorce, he might argue that he contributed to renovations," Mr. Perry said. "But if he didn't, and if you can show that the gift was clearly intended for you, the original status matters. I can prepare a certified statement confirming the history." "Please do," she said. "And don't mention any of this to my husband." "Of course," he replied. "Come back tomorrow afternoon." When Naomi stepped back onto the street, the city felt different under her feet. Betrayal still lay ahead, but she was no longer walking toward it blindfolded. She had documents on her side, an inheritance waiting to be claimed, and one more thing the people plotting against her had never considered. She had stopped believing that she needed them to survive. The envelope from Germany arrived 2 hours after her visit to Mr. Perry. Naomi opened it at the kitchen table, smoothing out the creases. The notary's letter confirmed what she already knew, but seeing it in black and white steadied her. Ownership papers for the Munich apartment. Documentation for the Miami Beach condo. Bank confirmations listing balances that made her joint savings with Darren look like pocket change. By the time Darren called that afternoon, she was no longer the woman who had whispered, "Is my marriage over?" in the dark. She was a woman who owned 3 properties and over $1 million in liquid assets. None of that, she realized with a sharp, almost amused pang, had anything to do with him. "Naomi, my love," he said on the phone, overly jovial. "I've been thinking, let's make our anniversary huge. Colleagues, friends, family. I booked the ballroom at the Watergate for 100 guests. It's time people saw what a solid couple we are." 100? She asked quietly. "That must be expensive." "Don't fuss," he said quickly. "The money is there. This is about image." "Image," she repeated. The word tasted different now. Later that day, Celeste turned up again, cheeks flushed with fake excitement, and handed Naomi a cream-colored envelope. "This is from me to you," she announced. "Consider it a little insurance." Inside was a business card, Hayes & Associates, Family Law, with a handwritten note, "Free consultation for Naomi, anytime." Naomi had to fight the urge to laugh. The audacity of inviting her to drink tea with the man hired to strip her of her home was almost admirable. "That's very thoughtful of you," Naomi said, slipping the card back into the envelope. "You really are worried about me, aren't you?" "Of course, dear," Celeste cooed. "You're like family." The word stuck awkwardly in her throat. In 25 years, she had never once called Naomi daughter. She picked that moment, of all times, to try it on. After Celeste left, Naomi found a crumpled business card in one of Darren's suit jackets. Same name. Same firm. Same lawyer. There were no more illusions to nurture. That night, Darren locked himself in his study. Snatches of rehearsed sentences floated through the door. Dear friends, today is a special day. Sometimes, you have to admit past mistakes. Naomi is a good woman, but Naomi walked past once, twice, each time forcing herself not to burst in. Instead, she sat on the bedroom floor and assembled her own folder. Mr. Perry's statement about the condo's origin, the inheritance documents, proof of her individual accounts, printouts of his messages to Sierra and proof of secret debts. It felt like preparing armor. The day before the anniversary, Naomi visited the German consulate. A polite official reviewed Josephine's file and confirmed the next steps. The funds will be available within a week, he said. The properties, however, are already legally yours. You can occupy, sell, or rent them as you wish. From there, she went to the bank and opened a euro account. The advisor's eyes widened at the numbers, but Naomi felt strangely calm. Wealth, she was realizing, didn't fix everything, but it did remove the chains others believed they held. That afternoon, she went to inspect the hotel. Outside the Watergate, she saw her in person for the first time. Sierra, leaning against a marble column, speaking into her phone in the syrupy tone reserved for men with wallets. It's amazing, she was saying. The ballroom is huge. I can already picture the parties we'll throw once we move into that condo of yours. I'm so excited for tomorrow. After your speech, she'll understand, right? And I'll be there as your new assistant. So romantic. Naomi walked past her as if she were a stranger asking for directions. Excuse me, she said. Do you know where the manager is? Sierra gave her a quick once-over, dismissive and bored. No idea, she replied. I don't work here. Into the phone, she added lightly. Some lady is bothering me. Anyway, see you tonight. Love you. Some lady. Naomi smiled to herself. Tomorrow, that lady will stop being invisible. Inside, the restaurant manager greeted Naomi warmly. You must be Mrs. Sterling. Mr. Price has been very specific. Ballroom for 100, open bar, customized menu, live band. He insisted everything be flawless. How much does it come to? Naomi asked. $45,000, all paid in advance, the manager replied without shame. Naomi took in the chandeliers, the polished floor, the long table at the front. And the microphone? She asked. Where will my husband be speaking from? Right there, in the center. The manager pointed to an open space that would have every eye locked on the speaker. He said it was important that everyone hear him clearly. Oh, I'm sure it is, Naomi said. At home, Darren was pacing, shuffling papers, his speech, printed and folded. When he saw her, he hurriedly tucked it into a drawer. There you are, he said. Where did you go? Just checking the arrangements, she said. It looks impressive. $45,000 worth is impressive. He waved away the number. Money comes and goes. Reputation is what matters. That night Celeste arrived, almost trembling with anticipation. Son, are you ready? Did you rehearse? She asked, patting his shoulder like a director fussing over her star. Everything's perfect, Darren assured her. After tonight, everyone will understand I made the right choice. Naomi listened from the kitchen doorway as they whispered like conspirators. Celeste reassured him that Naomi wouldn't dare make a scene with so many people watching. Hayes would be waiting with papers. All Naomi would have to do, they believed, was sign. Later, when the condo was quiet, Darren stood in front of the mirror, smoothing his tie. Tomorrow's a big day, he said, his reflection addressing its own version of the truth. Yes, Naomi answered. Our anniversary. After tomorrow, he said, smiling at his own image, Both our lives will change completely. Can I ask you something? Naomi said from the bed, voice mild. Did you ever truly love me? At the beginning, when there were no condos, no parties, just us. He froze, tie in hand. What kind of question is that? He muttered. Of course I loved you. And I still do. In my own way. In his own way. The way you love an old coat you plan to donate once you buy a new one. Thank you, she said softly. I was just curious. The rest of the day passed in a whirl of calls and preparations. Darren's phone never quieted. Naomi moved through the condo like a ghost, silent and watchful. In the evening, she put on a new dark blue dress that skimmed her figure elegantly. She took her folder of documents, slipped it into her purse, and stood by the door. Ready? Darren asked, adjusting his cufflinks. He looked every bit a successful professional. Let's go make history. Naomi glanced at him, then at the folder hidden in her bag. Yes, she said. Let's. The ballroom sparkled. Crystal, candlelight, polished silver. 100 people milled around round tables draped in white linen. Colleagues, neighbors, relatives, and a smattering of acquaintances who loved free champagne. At the head table sat the couple everyone had come to celebrate, the loyal wife and the devoted husband. Naomi smiled and accepted congratulations, her hands steady even when her stomach was not. 25 years, Naomi, her co-worker Marina said, embracing her. You're a model of stability. My fiancé gets on my nerves after 25 minutes. Naomi laughed politely. Life can be full of surprises, she said. Tonight especially. Sierra hovered near the back of the room, introduced as Darren's new marketing assistant. She looked expensive and polished, her dress hugging her lithe figure, her eyes sweeping the room as though measuring it for conquest. A few people whispered. Most simply assumed Darren had hired some bright young thing. They had no idea. In a corner, a serious man in a dark suit sat alone, watching. Naomi recognized his face from an online search. Hayes. The lawyer who was supposed to swoop in after the emotional massacre and collect her signature like a vulture picking over a carcass. Darren worked the room, shaking hands, clapping shoulders, laughing too loudly. His mother floated a step behind him, soaking in the compliments directed at her wonderful son and his perfect marriage. Her eyes gleamed with smug satisfaction. When it was time, the master of ceremonies tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention? Mr. Price would like to say a few words in honor of his beautiful wife and their 25 years together. The room quieted. Glasses were set down. All eyes turned to Darren. He rose, straightened his jacket, and took the microphone. Friends, he began, his voice echoing across the ballroom. Thank you for being here tonight. 25 years ago, I made a choice. I married a woman I believed would walk by my side forever. Some guests smiled. A few clinked glasses. But life, he continued, is complicated. People change. What feels like the right decision at 28 may not be the right decision at 53. Sometimes, you have to be brave enough to admit a mistake. A ripple of confusion moved through the crowd. I have spent a quarter of a century, Darren went on, in a relationship that no longer reflects who I am. 4 years, I have tried to adapt, to endure. But I am a successful man. I need a partner who matches my ambitions. Naomi is a good person, but she isn't that partner. It's time for both of us to be honest. The murmur rose to a shocked buzz. Celeste watched, thrilled. Sierra's lips curved. Naomi's hands tightened under the tablecloth. Naomi, he said, turning toward her, I'm asking for a divorce. I want a fair division of what we've built and for you to move out of the condo so we can both start fresh. There is someone who understands me, who shares my vision. I think it's time I stopped pretending I'm happy when I'm not. Someone gasped. Someone else muttered, Is this a joke? Mr. Budrow, the CEO, stared at Darren as if he'd just grown another head. Marina looked at Naomi in horror. And that someone is, what? Your assistant. A voice called out from a distant table. Heads turned toward Sierra, whose assistant label suddenly looked flimsy. Sierra is a wonderful woman, Darren said flatly, dropping the pretense. She supports me in ways others never could. The room erupted in indignant voices. Naomi stood up slowly, every movement deliberate. She reached for the microphone. For a moment, Darren resisted, but the mood in the room had shifted, and he sensed it. He let go. Thank you, Darren, Naomi said, her voice soft but clear. Thank you for that honesty. She looked out at the sea of faces, some sympathetic, some curious, some furious on her behalf. You're right about one thing. It's time to stop pretending. Darren frowned. This was not how he'd imagined the scene. The truth is, Naomi continued, I've known about this performance for 3 weeks. I know about Sierra. She lifted a hand toward the blonde at the back, whose confidence faltered. I know about your late-night calls to your mother, and I know about Mr. Hayes over there, who was waiting to help me sign away my rights after you finished your heroic speech. All eyes swung to Hayes. The lawyer blanched and half rose from his chair. Don't rush off, Mr. Hayes, Naomi called pleasantly. You're part of the story now. Some guests laughed. Others clapped once, sharply, in grim approval. What is this? Darren demanded, trying to reclaim the microphone. Naomi held it firmly. This, she said, is the rest of the truth. You see, Darren made a mistake when he assumed he understood the law better than I do. He also underestimated the paper. She opened her purse and pulled out her folder. Our condo in Georgetown? My parents paid for it as a gift to me. The original deed lists me as the sole recipient. Darren's name was added later, out of generosity. I have a certified statement here from the lawyer who handled that transaction. Legally, it's my separate property. That's not possible, Darren snapped. We bought it together. No, she said calmly. They bought it for me. You moved in. The room murmured again, but now the current ran in Naomi's favor. And that's not all, she went on. A few weeks ago, my aunt passed away and left me a considerable inheritance. A condo in Munich, a luxury property in Miami Beach, and over $1 million in the bank. All in my name. Before tonight, I had considered presenting that as a romantic surprise. After seeing how you planned to surprise me, I'm glad I waited. Silence fell like a curtain. Even the band in the corner stopped tuning instruments. So, Naomi said, turning to Darren, when you speak of fair division, what exactly did you have in mind? Half of the cabin and half of your car? Because that's all that's truly shared. The rest, she tapped her folder, belongs to me. Sierra stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. The color drained from her face. And since we're discussing money, Naomi added, let's be transparent. Darren spent $45,000 of our joint savings on this party. Not to celebrate our love, but to stage my public humiliation. Consider this my contribution to entertainment. The truth. Guests began muttering, some outraged on her behalf, others simply stunned by the scale of his arrogance. A woman shouted from a nearby table, You spent 45 grand to dump her? Are you out of your mind? Mr. Budrow rose, his expression icy. Darren Price, he said loudly. We need to talk about your judgment. In private. At the office. Don't bother bringing your access card. Wait, Darren stammered. This isn't about work. Oh, it is now, his boss replied. You chose to make your personal cruelty a public show. That says something about your character. And I'm not sure your character belongs in my company. In the back of the room, Sierra snapped. You promised me a condo, she shouted at Darren. You promised me we'd pay off the loans with your share, that we'd live like royalty. Where is all that, Dee? Where's the money you took from the banks? Loans, someone repeated, loudly. Sierra, drunk on anger and broken dreams, barreled on. Yes, loans. He took 20,000 from one bank, 15 from another, 8 from a quick lender. All in secret, all using their shared assets. And where did it go? On me. On jewelry, on trips, on dinners. Not on his wife, let's be very clear. Heads snapped back to Darren. Even Naomi, who had braced for ugliness, hadn't known about the exact amounts. Celeste rushed forward, her composure shattered. What loans? She demanded. You told me everything was under control. I mortgaged my house to help you pay that lawyer. Mom not here, Darren hissed, but it was too late. The spectacle he'd arranged had become an autopsy of his own character. Do you people see now? One of Naomi's relatives said loudly, rising from his chair. They planned to strip her of everything. Mother, son, mistress, and lawyer all together. Guests pulled out their phones. Fingers flew. Someone muttered about hashtags, about how quickly this would explode online. Darren lunged for the microphone, but no one was listening to him anymore. Naomi placed it back on the stand with quiet finality. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow, she said simply. Hayes can go home. I won't need his services. Darren, you are free to chase whatever version of happiness you think you deserve. Just don't do it from my condo. She turned to the crowd, shoulders straight. To those of you who came in good faith, I'm sorry your evening turned into this. But sometimes, the truth needs an audience. Thank you for standing here to see who is who. Then she walked out, head high, past the stunned waiters and the glittering chandeliers, past the woman who had called her some lady, past the man who had traded 25 years of loyalty for a younger face and a doomed plan. Outside, the night air was cool, smelling faintly of the river. Naomi drew in a long breath that felt like the first one she'd taken in years. Through the tall windows, she could see the chaos she'd left behind. Darren arguing with his mother, guests throwing him disgusted looks, Sierra gesturing wildly, Mr. Budrow shaking his head. The house of cards he had built so carefully was folding in on itself. Naomi turned away and stepped into a waiting taxi. Where to? The driver asked. Home, she said, and for the first time, the word no longer meant, where he is. 3 months later, Naomi stood in a courtroom, watching the legal remnants of her marriage being sorted into tidy lines in a judge's ledger. Darren sat at the opposite table, looking as if someone had scrubbed the color from his life. His expensive suits had been replaced with something cheaper. His hair, once carefully groomed, was shot through with gray, and his eyes had the dullness of a man who hadn't slept properly in weeks. The judge adjusted her glasses and read from the documents. The condo on M Street is hereby recognized as the separate property of Mrs. Naomi Sterling, gifted to her by her parents prior to the addition of Mr. Price's name, and is therefore excluded from division. Darren's new attorney, not Hayes but a young public defender who looked half embarrassed to be there, made one last attempt. Your Honor, my client believes that, over the years, his contributions created a shared interest. Belief is not evidence, the judge cut in. The documentation is clear. The petitioner failed to provide proof of substantial investment into the property. The court affirms the condo is Mrs. Sterling's separate asset. Naomi sat still, her friend Aisha beside her, a quiet pillar of support. As for the cabin and the vehicle, the judge continued, those are marital assets acquired during the marriage and will be divided equally. The loans incurred during that time, however, she shuffled papers, were undertaken for purposes unrelated to household welfare. Therefore, under the relevant family code provisions, Mr. Price alone shall be responsible for repayment. Total debt, $43,000. Darren's shoulders sagged visibly. The marriage is hereby dissolved, the judge concluded. No spousal support is awarded, as both parties are capable of supporting themselves and have no minor children. The gavel struck. Outside the courthouse, Darren caught up with Naomi on the steps. The autumn sky hung pale and thin above them, so different from the warm Miami horizon she'd grown accustomed to imagining. Naomi, he called, breathless. Please. Just a minute. She turned. He stood there with his folder of documents, the same way he'd stood with divorce papers hidden behind a speech weeks before. But now there was no audience, no chandelier light, no microphone. Just two people and the echo of a life lived side by side. "I'm sorry," he said, the words tumbling from him. "I was an idiot. I let greed and vanity eat my brain. You didn't deserve any of it. Not the lies, not the party, none of it." Naomi watched him quietly. Once, his remorse would have been enough to make her lay everything down and start again. Now she saw it for what it was. Sincere, perhaps, but coming far too late. "I don't carry hate for you," she said calmly. "You are who you are, Darren. You wanted an easy life, even if someone else paid the price for it. I want something different. I want honesty, even when it's uncomfortable." "Could we stay in touch?" he asked. "Not as husband and wife. Just as old friends." She shook her head gently. "No. We've done enough for each other. It's healthier if we walk in separate directions." She walked to her car, a new Audi bought with a small portion of her inheritance, and drove away without looking back. The video from the anniversary, of course, had traveled faster than any lawyer's letter ever could. Clips of Darren's grand speech, Naomi's calm rebuttal, Sierra's meltdown, and Celeste's shock had gone viral. People had edited them together with captions and music. Hashtags about silver anniversary betrayal trended for several days. Darren lost his position shortly after the party. His company didn't want a scandal magnet attached to its name. Job hunting turned into a series of closed doors. Employers recognized him from the video. Some even smirked. Eventually, he ended up driving an old Toyota as a rideshare driver, the very car he'd bought back from Naomi for half its value. The condo he'd once fantasized about taking was out of reach, both legally and financially. He moved in with Celeste, who had been forced to sell her prized mansion and buy a smaller place at the edge of the city to pay off debts and legal fees. "Dee, my son," she would sigh at night, looking at the peeling paint on the walls. "If only you had listened to me. If only you'd never gotten involved with that girl. You liked her well enough when she was part of the plan," he would mutter. In another corner of the city, Sierra landed on her feet. 2 months after the scandal, she married a wealthy restaurant owner nearly 20 years older than her. On social media, she posted photos of their grand wedding. Flowers, diamonds, and captions about finally finding true love and healthy relationships. Darren saw those posts once while waiting between fares. He gave a bitter smile. Sierra had always known how to land on the safest branch. Naomi, meanwhile, was not thinking about hashtags or ex-husbands. She had followed through on the possibility that once seemed like a distant mirage. The Miami Beach condo became her new home, a bright, airy apartment overlooking the ocean, filled with light and the sound of waves instead of whispers through doors. She resigned from her position as a controller. When she told Mr. Budrow, he tried to persuade her to stay. "You're the best we've ever had," he said. "After what you went through, half the women in the office consider you a hero. Are you sure you want to leave?" "I'm grateful," she replied. "But I spent 25 years organizing other people's money. It's time to organize my own dreams." With part of her inheritance, Naomi opened a small publishing house dedicated to translated European literature, an old passion she had shelved when life became all about balance sheets and budgets. She hired a handful of talented young translators and an editor whose enthusiasm matched her own. They printed modest runs of beautiful books, the kind of volumes that ended up on the shelves of people who underlined sentences and kept them for years. Her friend Aisha visited one evening, stepping out onto the balcony with a mug of tea. Below them, Miami shimmered, neon and ocean and distant music. "You look peaceful," Aisha observed. "Do you feel avenged?" Naomi considered the question. "No," she said finally. "Revenge would mean I wanted them to suffer as I suffered. What I wanted was to be safe, to be heard, and to keep what was mine. I didn't hurt them. They destroyed themselves. I just refused to go down with them." Do you regret the 25 years? Aisha asked. Naomi leaned on the balcony railing, watching waves break into white foam. Regret is a heavy coat, she said. Those years taught me how to read people, how to rely on myself, and how to recognize the moment when silence is more dangerous than confrontation. I won't carry regret. I'll carry lessons. One day, a letter arrived in Naomi's mailbox, forwarded from her old address. The handwriting was familiar. Naomi, I don't know if this will reach you, and I don't deserve for you to read it. I just wanted to tell you that I understand now. You were the best thing in my life. I traded you for illusions and lost everything. I won't ask for forgiveness. I only hope you're happy. Darren. She read it once, folded it carefully, and placed it in a drawer, not as a wound but as a relic. Something that had once mattered and no longer ruled her days. That night, she stepped out onto her terrace with a cup of coffee. Below, the city pulsed with life. The air smelled of salt and flowers. Inside, a stack of manuscripts waited on her desk. Behind her, shelves full of books whispered with possibilities. Naomi thought of the woman she had been, waking in the dark to whispers that excluded her, believing she was powerless against the plans being spun around her. She thought of the woman who had taken a microphone and spoken the truth when everyone expected her to dissolve into tears and vanish politely. No, she decided. She wasn't a perfect heroine or a saint. She was simply someone who had refused to be written out of her own story. Somewhere, in another city, Darren drove through traffic, glancing occasionally into his rearview mirror, seeing not only the passengers behind him, but the man he had been, and the man he might have been, had he chosen differently. Life had moved on, dividing everything the way the court never could. Not just properties and debts, but dignity, freedom, and peace. In the end, the truth had done what it always does. Quietly, patiently, it had outlasted the lies.